Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the greatest speech of all time! Yay! I've been having some pretty good luck lately with a couple of speeches out of Shakespeare that are delivered by the historical characters of Mark Antony and Henry V. And there seemed to be something about the intense commitment of the speaker, the life and death stakes surrounding the speech, and the rhetorical heights into which the speaker would spiral. I was memorizing these speeches one word, one phrase, one sentence at a time, putting myself into the shoes of the speaker, examining the tension implicit in the process of the speaking, questioning, guessing, supposing why one well-placed word was chosen over another, gradually absorbing the manner in which the speaker was essentially dancing in the space of the listening of the audience. Would it be possible to revisit several moments of rhetorical greatness scattered through history, knocking down the walls between ourselves and this or that moment in time? And if it was possible to knock those walls down over a series of stops along the way, might that series of points not begin to suggest a line, a connection between ourselves and the overall arc of history? And so, about a year ago, I fed the phrase, "the greatest speech of all time," into the Google. And what you're going to see tonight is my collection of what the Google spat back out at me. He was convicted of these crimes and allowed to plead for his own life. He suggested, famously, that the unexamined life is not worth living, a passive-aggressive defense at best, and was therefore condemned to death. The difficulty, my friends, lies not in escaping death, but in escaping unrighteousness, for that runs faster than death. I am old and move slowly, and the slower runner has overtaken me, and my accusers are keen and quick, and the faster runner, which is unrighteousness, has overtaken them. And now I depart hence, condemned by you to suffer the penalty of death. And they too go their way to suffer the penalty of villainy and wrong. I must abide by my award. Let them abide by theirs. Shakespeare drew his plot for Julius Caesar from Plutarch's The Life of Julius Caesar. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones, so let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it were a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Frederick Douglass was a slave for the first 20 years of his life, barely allowed to learn to read and write, but upon his escape to the North, he soon finds himself much in demand as a speaker on behalf of the abolitionist movement. He writes his autobiography, eventually writes 3 autobiographies. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could I reach the public ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke, for it is not light that is needed, but fire. At first, the speech met with mixed reviews, with the Chicago Times calling it silly, flat, and dishwatery, while the Springfield Republican called it the perfect model, a speech that would reward further study. History has clearly sided with the latter opinion. "47 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal." After having served from 1901 to 1909, nearly 2 full terms as president, here in 1912 he was running once again for president, this time not as a Republican, but as the leader of the newly formed Bull Moose Party. Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible. I don't know if you fully understand that I have just been shot. But it takes more than that to kill a bull moose. But fortunately, I had my manuscript. So you see, I was going to make a long speech, and there is a bullet. There is where the bullet went through. And it probably saved me from it going into my heart. The bullet is in me now, so that I cannot make a very long speech, but I will try my best. Teddy's distant cousin, Franklin Roosevelt, takes over as president in 1933 from the failed Herbert Hoover administration, with the unemployment rate standing at 25%. He knows that with his first inaugural address, he needs to come out swinging, taking on the financial interests. First of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. And finally, there must be a strict supervision of all forms of banking, credits, and investments. There must be an end to speculation with other people's money. In each case, he is addressing the House of Commons, but always with an eye to the United States, encouraging them to get off the fence and join the war effort. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and the oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. The day before he was assassinated in Memphis, Martin Luther King was going to take the night off. He was feeling sick and stayed behind in the hotel room while his colleagues went to address the striking sanitation workers of Memphis. But when they arrived in the assembly hall, they discovered that in spite of the torrential thunderstorm that was raging around them, that the place was packed with thousands of people who had clearly come to hear Dr. King speak. And so they called back to the hotel, and Dr. King came along to join them. But there was another letter there from a little girl, a young girl at the White Plains High School. I looked at that letter, I'll never forget it. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School," and she said, "While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I am a white girl, and I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. Well, I'm just writing to tell you that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze." And I want to say tonight that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters.